Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy Heroes. This is a talk video, and yesterday we got ourselves the most recent road ahead. The broad strokes of it are the Tusken faction is getting a little love. A new raid is coming featuring the Krayt Dragon, which will also bring with it an overhaul to the raid system. And in conjunction with Jedi Survivor, Kestis is joining the game as a hero's journey character. But before we begin breaking that down, I think it's also worth highlighting up front that this road ahead is a meaningful departure from CG. They gave us a lot fewer hints and a lot more named characters, and I think that's a side effect of the ongoing leaks. I've spoken about this in the past. You can go to a previous talk and quarterly speculation video from November if you want a deeper discussion of my viewpoint. But I think it's an unfortunate signal because while it's always nice to know things, it means there's less to anticipate. There's fewer surprises. And in a game that takes this much of our time, I want surprises to look forward to. And this road ahead may be a sign from CG that in response to the leaks, they've given up and they'll just dump future news early to get ahead of those leaks. Some of you might think that's a good thing, but I don't. We begin with the Tuskens, and most longtime viewers know that I have spoken about them pretty consistently in my quarterly speculation videos for nearly 2 years now. But this last quarterly speculation video, I left them off. I really didn't think this quarter would be for the Tuskens with how much else is going on right now with Lucasfilm or about to go on. So while I'm not surprised to see some new Tuskens, I'm a little surprised by the timing. All in all, though, this is great news and fits into my Tusken agenda. Because as a child Star Wars fan, Tuskens and Greedo were my favorites, I think, because I just like weird-looking characters. No Jedi for me. The Tusken announcement, though, it comes with 2 new characters, Tusken Chieftain and the Tusken Warrior. I was fully expecting the Tusken Warrior. The Chieftain is a slight surprise, but it gives us a full squad of Tuskens, which could result in a few things. We could get a legendary or journey event that I've been calling for that brings us Tusken Boba. Or this is the intended long-term use for Sign of Jango, and Warrior may give us a 5v5 Ami that allows for that Sign of Jango, or it may just be in the kit. We'll probably know that in the next several weeks. Either way, work on your Tuskens if you haven't already. We'll tackle this with the Chieftain in more detail with a separate kit reveal and analysis video. The details that they give us on these characters emphasize Boba Fett and momentum. It may mean Sign of Jango becomes meaningful to the game. I would prefer that he be useful elsewhere and we get that Tusken Boba, but I'll accept it if this is how CG wants us to use him. Not what I want, though. The last part here, and this is worth highlighting down in this section, is Tuskens will be important characters for feats moving forward. Looking at how critical Inquisitors and droids have been for recent feats, thinking you can ignore this faction will be a mistake. Take them to at least Gear 11. You can muddle through some of those feats at a minimum at that level, most likely. That's what I've been doing in the past with my roster. Roarer and Shaman are super easy to gear. Raider is still a pain, but gear is way easier now than it's ever been. The old Tuskens are not that big of an impediment, and I don't anticipate either Chieftain or Warrior to have more than 3 Kairos, because that's kind of the max that we're seeing up to at least that Gear 11 staging ground that I emphasize here on this channel. That stuff's not a big deal. This next section here, we are getting a new raid, and it's a raid with a fun encounter. But more important than that is a long-needed overhaul to the raid system. I think this is very good news and could set us up for a future that includes far more regular updates to raids. with the Krayt Dragon. What they let us know about this encounter to start with is debuffs will help control the dragon, and burst damage in a short window is going to be critical to taking on the Krayt Dragon. As debuffs are inflicted, it'll remove stacks of Defiance to minimize the effects of the boss's attacks, and debuffs will be conditional. Different debuffs will have different effects from how I'm reading it. So there will be some strategy in who we use and how we play. And the raid is going to have a single phase. The raid will also be limited to Hutts, Jawa, Mandalorians, Old Republic, and Tuskens. At the moment, there is nothing specifying whether or not there will be a relic minimum. I hope that's not the case, but the limitations in factions may turn out to be a very good thing, because it means it will be far easier to design raids without game-breaking interactions and loops, which hopefully means we start seeing them more often, and that is one of the stated goals in the next section here about general raid changes. This has been one of the larger themes from CG over the recent history, with the introduction of Galactic Challenges, Conquest, and the new Territory Battle, where we get a game that requires less time investment and manpower from CG, but set up in a way that gives us more content, not less. It is a promise that we're going to need to see fulfilled, but this is great, and I'm certainly optimistic about it. All right, let's get into it. Hopefully we can do this quick, but the script I have written out is pretty long. So point system. I'm thinking about this a little bit like the star system in the territory battles, or the Krayt system in Conquest, where there are damage thresholds for the guild to achieve, and the higher thresholds result in better prizes. This is two effects. One, we don't need to beat the raid to get some rewards. So like with the early days of the challenge rank, or if your guild couldn't beat it, all that time resulted in no reward. Now we get a reward regardless of clearing the raid. We will work more cooperatively. That is one of the goals for CG, and the incentives for finishing in the top 10 are gone, which is great. Since take a raid like the Sith raid, I rarely participate in mine. I don't even know when it's going on. If I happen to be playing while it's active, great, I get better rewards. But it's also cleared so quickly, that's very rare, and finishing in the top 10 in the Sith raid actually makes a huge difference. It makes it faster and easier to relic characters, because you get a good amount of those materials from those top 10 finishes, and a lot of us never get those opportunities. By making this change in the reward systems, this issue is removed, which will greatly help out guilds in general by allowing more players to benefit and invest in their squads faster, which will have a cascading effect and will do better in TW or TBs. This is great. Now, raid phases will be based on number of attempts, and attempts have a max score. So the attempt ends if the score is reached. This could either be great or it could be weird and annoying. We'll have to see it in action. This could put guild leaders in a position to contact members more consistently to make sure enough attempts have been entered. And for players with busier lifestyles, this could become a nuisance. I'm just hoping the attempts threshold is achievable by a reasonable percentage of guild participation, or that there is sufficient time to do so, because this could also just add a layer of complexity and another thing to manage. Now with this next section here, one raid only, I suspect this is going to have a larger effect on mid-game guilds and earlier guilds that are still managing to unlock raid characters. CG frames this like a favor, but I'm not convinced that it is. It depends on how quickly raids can be attempted, because we can now only attempt one raid at a time, which means if you're farming Han Solo, Traya, and Kenobi, you can't do them all concurrently. You're going to have to choose which one you're working on. And that may mean it takes longer to get them. I'm sure CG has considered this, so it may turn out to be a non-issue, but it's something I'll be paying attention to once this gets implemented. It could turn out to be a good thing though, because in some of those earlier guilds, getting those raid tickets can be a little bit harder. And without that raid ticket issue, it may mean that the raids are run more frequently for these earlier guilds, and thus the shards are accumulated faster than some of them are able to do right now. Because on top of this, raids are going to be launched with a single ticket now, a single ticket that CG has not explained how we are going to achieve. I think it's going to be fine. I think what they're saying is raids are just always going to be running. They say further down that raids are going to run the full duration. And what I think all this is going to mean, at least what I'm hoping it means, is after one raid ends, the next one starts. But this is one of those details that I think just needs to be clarified, and CG is being a little vague and leaving a lot for us to interpret. Now the rewards system is also changing. This, another thing that I think is going to be great. What we are seeing here is, and I think this is similar to what we are seeing in other game modes, a little bit like conquest rewards, where there are rewards we collect during the event and another set at the end, which should be a good incentive to encourage participation and make sure those attempt thresholds are being achieved by all guild members. The details are here if you want to visit the road ahead and look at it in more detail, but we're going to move to the limited faction use portion, which we've already addressed. But again, I think this is a good thing. The game is so big and complicated now with so many different counters and mechanics. By creating artificial limitations, it will open up design possibilities. It will allow CG to avoid the things that could break a raid and just make sure that we can have a fun raid. Now we have raid base difficulty. This previously we had tiers with the original 3 raids. Some of you just may have joined the game at a point beyond that being relevant if you were just always running the heroic tiers. But now we will get modifiers, and increased modifiers result in more rewards. On its face, this seems like a small difference. The only thing I want to key in on here is the higher difficulty modifiers. I wonder if they're also going to enforce relic minimums. That would be something I don't like. I've said this often, raise the ceiling, not the floor. And with the other associated changes with factions, I think that would remove the possibility of a Gear 11 or 12 team that can loop and cheap a high score. So I would like to be able to bring in any character regardless of gear level to try and participate in these individual reward tracks. If they get blown out for being too low gear, fine, but I still want to throw it in and see what's going to happen with them. Next portion here on limited successful attempts per player. This is just bringing something from the lower tiers to the higher tiers. Technically, we've already had this in the game. Legacy raid changes with this. The existing raids are going to change a bit. For most of us, this won't affect us, since by only being able to play a single raid, veteran guilds will never play these other ones again. Stuck in here though is a sneaky awesome thing from this road ahead, is the TB related prestigious quests in addition to the raid prestigious quests are going to be removed. And that is huge for me because I have been stuck on that fulcrum quest for years due to the Rogue One Hoth mission, and now I'll be able to finally complete it and become a rebel, whatever. I no longer remember what it is that I was even working on. Challenge Rancor is being removed. This is good news to me. That raid was no fun. And although they state achievements related to the Challenge Rancor are being removed, I want to know what that means for the Gamorrean Guard profile picture. Because I don't think they're going to remove the picture from those who already have it. Does that mean they just give that out in a different way? That's a detail that I think is worth paying attention to, because some players put in a lot of effort to unlock that one, and I even made partial progress on it. The final things here about the raid are we're going to have a blackout period that's going to go on for a week prior to the implementation of this, so finish any raids before this occurs. And the additional changes, I think what is implied here is that we can always have a raid going. I said this a little bit earlier. I would think the only reason that raids need to run their whole duration is to prevent players from running them too quickly. So as soon as one ends, the next one can start, and that way CG is controlling that resource income sufficiently. The final portion here is the hero's journey on Kestis. Now, he was leaked a while back, but he was also one that I had marked for this quarter regardless, because we've already had a couple Fallen Order characters, and it made too much sense to release him around the release of Jedi Survivor. I think him being a journey character and not a marquee character is great. I'm sure CG will require that at Relics, but I'm hoping CG lowers the threshold a little bit just to incentivize older players to come back to the game. Now, the characters they have announced, there's going to be 5 total to unlock Cal Kestis, so there's going to be an additional 3 on top of Seri, Junda, and Marin. But quickly touching on each of these characters, Cal Kestis going to be a 3 Ami character and unaligned Force user. BD1, though, is the most important part here. He is going to have some healing mechanics for the squad. Seri Junda, she's an additional unaligned Force user leader for all types of them, both light side and dark side. The fact that they state she works extremely well with Cal Kestis suggests to me they will be 2 of the key components of whatever the intended squad for them is. What I'm also hoping for is some Inquisitor viability, because Grand Inquisitor and Third Sister takes a lot of investment and results in 2 leftover characters that I would like to see a home for because of the investment that you place into them. Marin is up next. This is one I'm pumped for. Night Sisters are already awesome. They are one of my most recommended squads. They can punch up a ton. So to see what he's going to bring to this squad is something you will see me go after early. Plus, hopefully it means his addition results in the Secrets in Shadow assault battle being beatable for the majority of us. Because right now, that's the only one I can't even beat Challenge Tier 2 on. Now, we know there's going to be at least 3 more characters to lead up to this journey. Everyone should be on the lookout for Saw Gerrera. This is one of those data points that I've been pointing to, saying why he is on the verge of coming to this game. There could also be Purge Trooper. I think that might be a little unlikely. There's tons of characters from the game, tons of additional bosses who we could be saying that could be very fun. The other element here is they bring up the planet Braca, and that is going to tie into the territory battles, and that fits into the promise of what CG has been suggesting, where they're going to be able to unlock other planets on that map and start changing how we play that game mode. To see how that exactly gets implemented is something that I think will be very interesting. And they also call out here that the next road ahead will be in April, and that sounds like that's going to be the timing on the raid, and I like that they've committed to something about that timeline. And now for our wrap up, this is the free-to-play gearing that I did on December 13th. 15th. This one here, you can see Hondo, we have finished. He's a fast farm. If you haven't worked on any of the Afro characters, I think you should prioritize. They're a small investment, relatively speaking, and you can make rapid changes to your roster, and I just unlocked Afra. And Sana is also a very fast farm. This Lando has been finished on the farm. Bosch finished right around the same time. You can see she was at 77 out of 100, so like another week after this she was completed. Throwing the Zeta onto Sana for testing purposes, although at low stars she's not very viable. I have her farmed up now at around 5 stars. That's where it was like worth the risk. You can see this is the progress I was at on December 13th. Still a 5-star profundity at that point. Taking up Lando to gear 11 so I can max out all the ship abilities and utilize that a little bit more effectively in the territory battle. Any pilot should be taken up to gear 11, and that's another reason why it's a good staging ground for your roster. Threw on even though I don't have gear 12 or even relic characters for a lot of the First Order, I wanted to throw on the Ami, see if it could give me like another viable defensive squad. I've had mixed results. It's a great Ami for SOKR players. For players like me who don't have SOKR, that's much more debatable. I don't think I've really seen a return on it. I'm just taking a look at those few other things. That wraps up this road ahead. Overall, I think it was excellent. Most of this, I think, was all very good news. We're getting a ton of new characters. They announced 5 in this one with the promise of an additional 3 characters. And there's a ton of things to look forward to with the raid and all the potential implications of all these new characters. The kit reveal for the Chieftain will be coming up several hours after this one. I've already got the script written for that one. Got to shoot it, and we'll have it up soon. But thank you for watching. Be safe out there, everyone, and be excellent to each other. This is still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.